Welcome to Tell Me Why. To visit any hall, just click on the doorway you want to enter. To walk backwards, use the arrow on the bottom of the screen. The traffic lights let you stop, skip ahead, and use other features of the program. So just click on a doorway to get started.
Yeah, I'm a little scared now. Let's see what we got here. Thomas Edison, the compass, telephone, fuse. Alright, educational purpose. Let's see what Thomas Edison did. Or Thomas Edison.
Hi, I'm Thomas Edison, and I saw the light. In fact, I invented it. Find out more inside.
Yeah, this is going to be great, folks.
Don't know where to turn? Come inside. I'll point you in the right direction.
Creepy.
Hello, it's for you. I've got an offer you can't refuse. Take a break with me inside.
Alright, let's try magnetism. Because I'm already curious how that works. Ooh.
You can make a magnet pick up pins, paper clips, even a car if it's powerful enough. Magnets have a natural attraction for certain metals containing iron, cobalt, and nickel. No one knows exactly how the magnet was discovered. One story is that a shepherd named Magnus was watching his sheep on the slopes of Mount Ida in Greece when he noticed that his metal staff and the nails in his sandals were clinging to a plain black stone. That stone was a natural magnet that we now call magnetite. So magnets may have been named after Magnus, but another possibility is that they were named after a place called Magnesia in what is now Turkey. There was lots of magnetite in Magnesia. And did you know that a suspended magnet will point approximately to the north? Ancient sailors used magnetite as a compass, so they called it lodestone or leading stone. In 16th century England during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, scientists discovered that magnets have two opposite ends, or poles. One pole of a magnet always wants to point to the north. The other always wants to point south. Sounds like a problem, doesn't it? But when two or more magnets get together, these opposite poles attract each other, while same poles, north and north for instance, repel or push each other away. In the 18th century, it was discovered that magnets produce magnetic fields. These are magnetized areas stretching away from each pole of a magnet. And it was also in the 1700s that people learned how to make magnets using electricity. The most powerful electromagnets used today can pick up extremely heavy weights. Magnets help operate a surprising number of everyday objects, including radios, televisions, and electric motors.
It's hard to navigate. Let's go back.
odd that a fuse is one of the few things in the world that's actually designed to break? A fuse automatically cuts off electricity when there's a wiring problem or too much electricity is being used in a circuit. All fuses work the same way. When an overload of electricity occurs, like when too many appliances are running at once, the heat in the wires melts a metal piece inside the fuse. This stops the flow of electricity, cutting off the power to everything on that electrical circuit. Fuses give us time to turn off appliances or fix an electrical problem before there's a fire. By the way, the electrical circuit in your home isn't the only place you'll find fuses. Fuses are used in a variety of electrical items, from your home stereo to your automobile. These days, we usually use circuit breakers instead of fuses, but they both work the same way. A circuit breaker is a switch that breaks the electrical connection when the electricity becomes too great. It does the same job as a fuse. When an overload occurs, an electromagnet in the circuit breaker opens the circuit and sets the switch to the off position. After fixing the problem, all you have to do is reset the breaker to its normal position, and it will go to work again. When a fuse blows, you have to replace it with a brand new fuse. From the twinkling lights of a chandelier to the warning flashers on an airport runway, electric bulbs light up every corner of our world. But why does a bulb light up when you flick a switch? The light is just a glass bulb with thin wires in it called filaments. Electricity causes the filaments to heat up and give off light. But it took Thomas Edison a while to find that out. At first, when he was trying to perfect the light bulb, Edison experimented with thin threads of carbon as the filaments. He found that carbon filaments glowed when they were heated with electric current, but then they burned up in the air. So he put the filaments in a glass bulb and pumped out all the air, creating a vacuum. The filaments glowed brightly and the carbon didn't burn. Today, we use a metal called tungsten for filaments because it can be heated up to 6,100 degrees before melting. You can create your own light bulb with simple items from a hardware store. You'll need a single strand of thin picture wire, 2 8-inch pieces of copper bell wire, a 6-volt lantern battery, a nail, some tape, and a jar with a lid. Now just click on the numbers. Coil the picture wire around the bell wire. Then slip the picture wire off, like this.
Okay, I'm not sure about this, but I'll continue anyway.
Punch 2 nail holes in the jar. Be careful to punch the lid, not your hand.
Yeah, otherwise you'd be going to the hospital.
Now put about 2 inches of bell wire through the holes, 1 piece through each. Tape them into place on the lid. Connect the coiled picture wire filament to the end of the copper wire. Screw the lid onto the jar so the filament is on the inside. Now attach the rest of the bell wire to the battery. The picture wire filament will glow for a few moments, creating a small light.
And now you're a mad scientist.
You've seen long tubes of fluorescent lights at school and in the library. But did you know that they work very differently than ordinary light bulbs? Fluorescent lights work because of solid crystal powders called phosphors that give off light when they're exposed to a form of energy called ultraviolet rays. A fluorescent light begins with a glass tube that is coated with phosphor. Then the tube is filled with mercury vapor. When an electric current is passed through the tube, it causes the mercury vapor to produce ultraviolet rays. The phosphor on the walls of the tube absorbs the ultraviolet rays and gives off white light. Light given off in this manner is called fluorescence. The word fluorescent comes from fluorspar, a mineral that can give off light in different colors. Fluorescent lights are often used in schools and other places where a lot of light is needed. They last up to 10 times as long as a regular bulb, and they use much less electricity, and that saves money. They also give off as much as 4 times more white light, and they don't heat up. Tubular fluorescent bulbs can be made in unusual shapes, even a complete circle. You know that batteries make all kinds of things work, from flashlights to radios, but just how do batteries work? Batteries make electricity by changing chemical energy into electrical energy. A battery has 2 elements called electrodes made of 2 different metals, or a metal and carbon. The electrodes are immersed in a chemical solution called the electrolyte. In a regular flashlight cell, the 2 electrodes are made of carbon and zinc. The carbon electrode is called the cathode. As it dissolves in the acidic electrolyte, the cathode develops a positive charge. The zinc electrode, which is also the container, is called the anode. As the anode dissolves, it produces extra electrons which give it a negative charge. Electrons will flow from the anode to the cathode if a path is created. When you connect the battery ends with a wire or turn on the switch of your flashlight, you make that path and you get electricity.
I never learned this stuff at school. Cell phone batteries.
There are lots of batteries other than zinc-carbon cells, but they all work in basically the same way. You probably use alkaline batteries because they last longer than zinc-carbon cells. In an alkaline cell, the electrodes are made of zinc and manganese. It's called an alkaline battery because the electrolyte is alkaline rather than acidic. Some batteries can be recharged at home. The most common rechargeables are NiCads. NiCads have electrodes made of nickel and cadmium. The battery in your car is also called a storage battery. The electrodes are 2 sets of plates made of 2 different types of lead metal. Both sets of plates are covered in sulfuric acid, which is the electrolyte. Next time you see someone working on a car, you might want to take a look at the battery, but just look and don't touch. Sulfuric acid can give you a really bad burn.
You should definitely touch it. Alright, so that's enough of electricity. Let's go back. Back again. Did I do all this? I think there's only 2 here. Load. We didn't do compass.
You may think that a compass needle always points to the North Pole. But in the Northern Hemisphere, a compass doesn't point to the North Pole itself. Instead, it points to the North Magnetic Pole, which is on the northernmost point of the Arctic coast of North America. The exact position of the magnetic North Pole changes continuously, moving around in a 20-mile radius. The farther north you travel, the greater the difference between the North Magnetic Pole and true north. This was all very puzzling to the early mariners who sailed the Arctic seas around Greenland. As they approached the true North Pole, their compass needles pointed almost straight west. By the way, if you are below the equator in the southern hemisphere, a compass will point to the South Magnetic Pole. This pole is in Antarctica, just south of Australia. Making your own compass is easy, and you probably have everything you need right at home. First, find a sewing needle or straight pin, some staples, a magnet, a cork, a small pan, a large piece of paper, and a pen or pencil. Then just click on the numbers and follow along.
This was made in early 1990s, so I'm not quite sure anybody will have this material around, especially with a pencil. Everything can be done on the phone, but if you have the stuff, try it.
Take the needle or pin and rub it on the magnet in one direction about 40 times. Now, test your needle magnet by trying to pick up some staples. If it works, the needle is magnetized. Doesn't work yet? No problem. Just rub the needle on the magnet some more. When the needle is magnetized, push it through the cork. Be careful not to push it through your finger. Fill the pan with water and put in the cork. Now, put the paper underneath the pan, Write N for north on the top of the paper and S for south on the bottom. W for west goes on the left side and E for east on the right. Now rotate the paper until the needle is pointing to the N. If you live below the equator in the southern hemisphere, make the needle point to the S. Now you've got a compass. Face in the direction of the needle, which is north, and you can tell all the other directions accurately. For instance, west is to your left, east is to your right.
Exciting stuff. Actually, I did that in school one time. Alright, so let's see what's in the kitchen. Oh yeah, it's going to be a good one.
In a large bakery that turns out thousands of loaves of bread a day, yeast is used to make the bread rise. But when you bake cookies, cakes, or muffins at home, baking powder does the same job, but faster. Just what is baking powder? It's a mixture of two powders. One is always baking soda, also known as sodium bicarbonate. The other is an acid, such as cream of tartar. The two powders are mixed together with starch to keep them dry. Baking powder begins to dissolve when it is added to a cake or muffin batter. Then the acid reacts with the baking soda, producing thousands of little bubbles of carbon dioxide, just like soda pop. These bubbles spread through the batter, making the cake or muffins rise. The little holes you see in a cake are where the carbon dioxide bubbles expanded. So next time, before you eat your cake, take a look and see if you can find the little carbon dioxide holes that made that cake rise. One of the ingredients in baking powder is sodium bicarbonate, or baking soda. Baking soda has many uses outside cooking because it's both absorbent, like a sponge, and abrasive, like steel wool. For instance, you can use baking soda as a toothpaste, putting a little on your toothbrush and adding water. Don't do this too often, though, because even though it's a good cleanser, it's very rough on your teeth. Also, an open box of baking soda in your refrigerator helps get rid of bad smells. How does it do that? The chemical action of the mineral sodium bicarbonate actually absorbs odors in the air. And did you know that you can clean away rust with sodium bicarbonate or even shine the barbecue grill? That's because sodium bicarbonate absorbs grease and grime and is slightly abrasive. It helps you rub off dirt. Did you know that yeast, that grainy yellowish powder we use to make bread rise, is actually alive? Yeast is a microscopic one-celled organism. Although it's very tiny, it has a big effect when it reproduces and grows into large colonies. Yeast is a fungus, like mushrooms, and like the mushroom, it can't produce its own food. But in the right environment with the proper food, it will reproduce and grow. One environment that encourages growth is bread dough made with flour and sugar. As yeast starts to grow in the dough, it changes the sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. When the carbon dioxide is released, it begins to form bubbles inside the dough, and that makes the dough rise. When the bread loaf is put in the oven, the carbon dioxide expands, and the loaf rises even more. Finally, the alcohol evaporates in the heat of the oven, leaving a light, dry loaf of bread. You can see yeast's growing action for yourself. With an adult around, try this experiment. You'll need some sugar, water, a packet of yeast, and a 2-cup pitcher. Now, click on the numbers and follow along.
Yeah, you need an adult because if you don't do this properly, you might blow up your house. Yeah, okay.
Put 1 tablespoon of sugar and the packet of yeast, about 2 teaspoons, into the pitcher. Now add about 1 cup of water. Soon the yeast will start to bubble. That's the carbon dioxide being released. The yeast will foam and rise, and within 45 minutes it will have expanded to fill over half of the pitcher.
And make a mess of your kitchen. Didn't see here how to clean it. No, just kidding. Alright. Pepper.
You probably use pepper on some of your foods. Maybe you've even seen the hard black peppercorns in a pepper grinder. But where do peppercorns come from? They're the fruit or seeds of a shrub that originally grew on the western coast of India. Today, however, most of the pepper we eat comes from the East Indies, mainly Indonesia, where it's grown on plantations. The pepper plant needs a lot of care. It needs constant trimming and food to produce a good crop. It takes 3 years for a pepper plant to produce any peppercorns at all, and 7 years until it reaches full production. The fruit or berry is first yellow, then turns red when it's ripe. The pepper berries are picked when they're red, that way they have a sharper taste. After they're spread out to dry in the sun, they turn black. Then they're ground up and ready to be sold in the market. But go easy when you season your food with different peppers. Some can be really spicy. If you've ever looked at the spices in a market, you know that black pepper isn't the only kind you can buy. For instance, there's white pepper, which isn't as strong as black. It's simply black pepper without the outside skin. There are other spices that are like pepper, too. There's cayenne pepper, paprika, and Tabasco sauce, but they're not related to black pepper except by taste. They're made from red peppers, which come from an entirely different plant.
And there's green peppers, which you put on pizza. Alright, so let's see here, and kitchen, oh, classroom, here we go.
Have you ever stood in a lake and sifted wet sand through your toes? You might be surprised to learn that old-fashioned blackboards were the result of tiny particles of clay that sifted to the bottoms of lakes and seas millions of years ago. These particles slowly hardened underwater and formed into layers of mud rock called shale. When the earth shifted in violent prehistoric changes, the shale folded up into wrinkles, and other rocks squeezed it so much that it became hard rock. This is what we call slate. That slate was cut, polished, and became the blackboards used in schools. Slate isn't the only prehistoric material we use. Coal comes from the remains of plants. Limestone is made from fossil shells and corals that have been formed into rocks over millions of years. These rocks have been changed by weathering, erosion, heat, or pressure, and we use them today for many things, including fuel and building materials. We also study them to learn what our planet looked like millions of years ago, when ancient creatures roamed the earth. From the smooth, flat sheets of paper you write letters or draw pictures on, you'd hardly guess that most paper is made from wood pulp, rags, burlap, or even old rope. This base material is cut into small pieces, boiled and cleaned, and pulled out into threads. A machine beats the threads and adds other materials like talc, which gives paper its smooth surface. When paper is made from wood, the wood is mashed to a pulp and the water is pressed out. The pulp is then dried in steam-heated machines. Paper used to be made one sheet at a time, but in 1798 a machine was invented that made a continuous roll of paper, which was then cut into individual sheets. This machine was called a fourdrinier, after the man who perfected it, and we still use it today. Before there was paper, ancient peoples used all kinds of materials to express their thoughts in writing. If you want to find out what they used, just click on the map. The Seneca and Iroquois Indians of North America often used wampum belts with beads in the form of pictures to create messages. Cave dwellers in prehistoric France and Spain painted pictures on their cave walls. Monks in the Middle Ages used parchments from animal skins that were soaked and were then dried. Ancient Romans recorded their thoughts on bronze tablets. The Egyptians wrote on papyrus, a flexible roll made from the fibers of the papyrus plant. The people of Mesopotamia, which is now Iraq, wrote their wedge-shaped letters known as cuneiform on wet clay tablets. The ancient Chinese wrote on silk or similar materials with brushes, but they are also credited with the invention of paper. Did you know that the stick of chalk you use on a blackboard started out as a prehistoric animal? Millions of years ago, when tiny one-celled animals called foraminifera died, their microscopic shells sank to the ocean floor. Gradually, they became a thick layer of shells that were squeezed into the soft limestone we call chalk. The movement of the earth pushed the chalk layers up to the surface, making huge cliffs. So wherever we find chalk, even in inland areas, we know there once was water. The chalk we use to write with is mixed with a binding chemical substance to keep it from crumbling. And by adding pigments, chalk can be made in any color. Have you ever heard of the White Cliffs of Dover? They're huge cliffs on the English Channel, and they're made of chalk. That's what gives them their white color. The finest natural chalk comes from England, which produces more than 5 million tons of it each year. In the United States, chalk comes from Kansas, Arkansas, and Texas. And since chalk forms underwater, we know that some of today's flat fields and barren deserts were once under the sea.
Laser communications?
Have you ever wondered how all those pictures get into your TV set? Well, it all starts with a tube inside a television camera. A picture is focused onto the signal plate at the end of the camera tube. This plate is covered with a photoconductive material. That means that the more light the material is exposed to, the more electricity will be allowed to pass through it. An electron gun at the other end of the tube shoots a beam of electrons at the signal plate. It scans the image a line at a time. As it passes over the light and dark parts of the image, the photoconductive material allows different amounts of electricity to pass through. This signal then goes to your television, either by broadcasting through the air or by cable or on videotape. So as you flip from channel to channel, you can see everything from the weather report to your favorite videos and films. So now that the signal is inside your TV set, how does the picture get on the screen? First, the signal is sent to an electron gun, which shoots a beam of electrons onto the television screen. The screen is coated with phosphor dots, which give off light when the beam hits them. As the electron gun scans the screen line by line, the changes in the video signal cause the phosphors to make up the dark and light parts of the picture. Television sets were first sold back in 1939. The screens were tiny and round, and the sets sometimes didn't work very well, but that didn't prevent the fad from catching on. Color television made its appearance in the United States in 1953, and we've been glued to the tube ever since.
Oh, what's the orange stone there? Okay. How does our voice get over a telephone?
You pick up the phone, punch a few buttons, and suddenly you can call anywhere in the world. Have you ever wondered how it works? Well, it starts when vibrations from your vocal cords leave your mouth and go through the air as sound waves. In the telephone's receiver, the sound waves hit a thin disc in the phone's mouthpiece and cause the disc to move back and forth against a little carbon-filled box. The pressure on the carbon creates a small electrical current. The different vibrations of the sound waves make that current stronger or weaker. Now, how does the other person hear you? In their phone's earpiece is an electromagnet and another thin disc called a diaphragm. When the current comes through the phone wires, it causes the electromagnet to pull and release the disc like a drum. The vibrations of the diaphragm create the same pattern of sound waves that came from your voice. Just like ripples in a pond, sound waves are like invisible ripples in the air. But did you know that you can see sound waves? For instance, computers can take in sound and represent that sound in the form of a graph. The louder the sound, the higher the line on the graph. Just click on a sound to see what it looks like to a computer.
Should I do this? Yeah, alright, okay. Yeah, I usually see this kind of stuff here when you're doing sound editing. It's actually exactly the same thing. Tape recording. Oh well. We're desperate.
If you've ever heard your voice on a tape recorder, you might think it sounds funny. Not at all like you. But actually, a tape recording is a pretty accurate reproduction of your voice. Here's how it works. When you talk into a tape recorder, the microphone changes the sound you make into an electrical signal. This signal causes microscopic magnetic particles on the tape to be rearranged into a pattern, just like iron shavings are drawn to a magnet. When the tape is played, the pattern of magnetized particles is converted back into the exact sounds you made. Magnetic tape can be played many times before losing its quality. It can also be erased by rescattering the magnetized particles. Then you can tape your favorite music right over an earlier recording. The earliest tape recorders looked very different from those used today. They were much bigger, and recording was done on spools of wire. Eventually, metal tape was used. Then, when the United States and other allies captured Radio Luxembourg in 1944, they found very good tape recorders that were being used in radio broadcasting. They discovered that the Germans were using plastic tape coated with metal particles. Now everyone uses plastic tape, and tape recorders come in all shapes and sizes. Today, we even have tape recorders that work underwater.
Let's check lasers on CDs.
You've probably seen lasers at a concert or an amusement park, but have you ever wondered just what a laser is? The word laser stands for Light Amplification Stimulated Emission of Radiation. Laser beams are really just beams of light, like the light from the sun, but they're very strong, concentrated beams of light. Unlike the sun's rays, which scatter in many directions, the rays in a laser beam all travel in the same direction and fit together perfectly. This very focused beam of light has tremendous power. In fact, some laser beams are so strong that they can burn tiny holes in steel in less than a second. They can also travel long distances into space without spreading out and growing weak. Of course, lasers have more down-to-earth uses too, from reading the prices at the checkout stand of your local supermarket to playing the music on your favorite CDs. You probably know that you're watching and listening to a CDI disc right now, but do you know just how it works? CDI is short for Compact Disc Interactive. The interactive part is that you get to control what you see and hear. Regular compact audio discs hold only sound, like music or speech. CDI discs can have music, speech, pictures, animation, text, and computer programs. Like a regular compact disc, all the information on a CDI disc is digital. It's made up of numbers. Inside your CDI player is a powerful computer that turns these numbers into pictures and sound. Special electronic circuits display the pictures on your TV and play the sound through your stereo. CDI also lets you make choices. You can play games, visit faraway places, learn about your favorite musicians, and watch programs in an entirely new way, because now you can tell your TV what you want to see. A single CDI disc can contain an extraordinary amount of information. For instance, if all you wanted to do was hear my voice, I could talk to you for 19 hours on a CDI disc. There's room for more than 5,000 photographs like this one, or over 60,000 cartoon graphics. You could have a complete library with over 2,000 books containing only text, typed words. And your CDI player doesn't just play CDI discs. It also plays regular compact audio discs. Some even play laser video discs. CDI is a worldwide standard. That means you can play your Tell Me Why disc in any country in the world, even if the television systems are different.
Yeah, this can hold up 700 megs, and it's about 19 hours of talking. It all depends on the sound quality. She neglected to tell that, but anyway. I think that's it. How is the compact displayed?
Your favorite music sounds a lot better on compact disc than it does on a record or on the radio, and there's a good reason why. It's because compact discs play music in a totally different way. On records and tapes, sound is recorded as continuous changes in electrical current. This is called an analog signal. Compact discs take the same sound and with a computer turn it into a series of numbers. That's called a digital signal. Digital signals can be copied over and over without any quality loss because it's a lot easier to copy numbers accurately than electrical current. Using a very precise laser, these numbers are turned into holes on a compact disc. These pits are so tiny that 25,000 of them fit on a single inch on the disc. Your CD player bounces a tiny laser light off the pits and then reads that light with a photo detector. The player then turns this high-speed stream of numbers into the original music.
And that's why you always want to play digital.
Compact discs are made in factories that have special rooms called clean rooms, which are completely dust-free. First, a glass master disc is coated with a very thin, light-sensitive film. Then, a high-powered laser burns microscopic pits into the disc. The glass master is coated with silver to protect it, and a series of nickel duplicates are made from the master. These copies are used to stamp the actual compact discs. Each disc is made of plastic stamped with the pits. It's backed with aluminum, which the laser in your player will use as a mirror, bouncing light off the disc and into a photo detector. Finally, the disc is covered with a protective clear plastic coating.
And it's very cheaply made. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the video and did I tell you all this? I think yeah, I'm going to stop the video and we'll do part 2 of this next time.